Welcome to Biobiz Buzz, the podcast where we look at the latest innovations across biotech, pharma, and medical devices. I'm your host, Shani Alexander, and I'm a journalist with BioWorld, a leading publication that provides news, data, and analysis on the latest developments in the world of drugs and technologies. In this episode, I will be talking about an exciting device which not only has the potential to change the way breast cancer is diagnosed, but also treated. First, though, the harvesting of tissue samples from the body is crucial to diagnosing certain conditions, in particular when suspecting cancer. This is especially relevant in the field of breast cancer. Sweden-based Resitu Medical is developing a platform technology which is focused on removing large tissue samples intact. Their devices are minimally invasive, vacuum-assisted, single-use, and guided by ultrasound. And these devices have the potential to provide a solution that not only harvests the large tissue samples for diagnosis intact, but remove the tumor at the same time. And Resitu's first device has just recently received FDA clearance. So today I'm happy to be joined by two guests from Resitu, Åsa Runnäs, the CEO, and Elisabeth Liljensten, the Chief Clinical Officer. Welcome to Biobiz Buzz, both of you. Great news on the FDA clearance for your device. But before we dive into that, let's talk about Resitu. Åsa, if I may start with you, can you tell us a bit about the company and how it was started?
Yes, hi Shani, and thank you for having us. So the company was founded in 2019, and it was on the back of a technology developed by one of Europe's most famous plastic surgeons, Dr. Per Hedén. He wanted a way to basically transfer fat from one part of the body to another. But when he worked on early prototypes, he realized that the device had the potential to solve even larger problems in removing large tissue samples or even home tumors. So this is how he came to focus on breast lesions. So Resitu as a company was founded with a prime focus to develop this invention and take it through regulatory approvals and to market launch. Elisabeth and I were part of the early investors in the company, and together we set up the strategy for how to take this technology to the market in the absolute best possible way.
And what will your role be and Elisabeth's roles?
So now I am the CEO, but from start I have been responsible for both the development, regulatory and quality strategy for the company and for the devices, while Elisabeth has been responsible for the clinical strategy and how to sort of expand our claims with data from clinical studies.
Okay, I see. It's amazing how developing a device for one thing can lead to something else. So can you tell me now about the device and explain to us how it works?
Yes, and you explained it really well in the introduction. But to repeat, the device is vacuum assisted, it is minimal invasive, it is single use, ultrasound guided, and it uses diathermy to retrieve the tissue samples from the breast. But most important to explain the use procedure in short. So I said, always guided by ultrasound, and the physician introduces the device through a small incision in the skin of the breast. The device is then advanced through the tissue with blunt dissection, that is, without harming the surrounding tissue, and then until the tip of the instrument is just in front of the lesion. The sample capture relies on a combination of vacuum fixation, followed by cutting by a circular, really sharp knife. And to excise the sample from the tissue, the device uses an electrosurgical cutting electrode. So the instrument with the sample inside the tube is then withdrawn and the lesion is sent for histopathological analysis.
That sounds quite effective. Elisabeth, if I come to you now, how does the technology differ from what surgeons are using today to remove tissue samples?
Well, the reason we take biopsies in the first place is to look at it under the microscope. So we are looking at it, a histopathologist is effectively looking at it. And with our technology and with our device, we can take much larger tissue samples. So the histopathologist, they will have a much better overview when they look at it in the microscope. And this is beneficial for several reasons. You would have the architecture of the tissue intact instead of looking at much smaller fragments. So there is quite a big advantage to our technology. It is especially true if you compare it to, for instance, other available alternatives that you have today, those like needle biopsies or much smaller instruments. What they will give you are just tissue fragments, while again, we have the benefit of being able to remove larger samples. So instead of using our device and retrieving a large sample with our technology, today they will only be able to have the much smaller fragments of the lesion. And the risk with that is that they may need to go back and remove the tumor with, for instance, open surgery, if it turns out to be malignant. And in addition to that, we also think it is a very intuitive concept, both for the physician and the patient. So when you are being able to remove the complete lesion instead of, much smaller fragments and potentially not having to do open surgery, that really is a clear benefit for everyone, for the patient, for the physician, and so on. And if you continue with that thought, the result is that the healthcare providers, they will get both a simpler, less invasive option, and that will reduce both cost and waiting times. But most important is, of course, that the patient spend less time in uncertainty and they can move forward with treatment and recovery sooner.
That certainly helps. So you decided to focus on breast cancer first. Why is that?
Yes, we did. Well, breast cancer is, it's one of the world's most prevalent forms of cancer. So if you look back, 2022, there were approximately 2.3 million new cases worldwide. So it's very prevalent. And unfortunately, almost 700,000 people died of the disease. In terms of healthcare burden, the impact of breast cancer is also felt very differently if you look at the global north and you compare that to the global south. The data from low and middle income countries, it's dire. You have about 5 billion people that are without access to safe surgical care. And if you put that in other number, it means that as many as 9 out of 10 people don't have access to safe surgery. And going back to what you said about the large tissue samples, this is really one of the large advantages for us because we will be able to remove the large tissue samples in an outpatient setting. So if you are in a situation in the world where surgical theaters or anaesthesiologists or anything else that you need for surgery is lacking, it's far from certain that you can even treat breast cancer surgically. So for us, by showing that Resitu's instrument can be used safely in an outpatient setting in the global south, it will give us a great opportunity to have a European invention, and that can change many, many lives in countries where there are few or even no other available alternatives.
That sounds amazing. And the transformative nature of your technology has been seen and reviewed in the US and accepted because you recently received FDA clearance. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, we just received 510(k) clearance in a very timely way as well. But we received this for our first device, which is intended for removal of breast tissue from an image abnormality for diagnostic purpose. And we are really glad that we received this just within 75 days since we submitted. But I think we have had a clear strategy from the very beginning for how to develop our products. And the regulatory requirements have been part of our planning from day one. And everything in the development has focused on making sure that we are compliant with the requirements from the regulatory bodies. We know that there is no shortcuts. You have to have a clear strategy and a focus to make sure that you develop a safe and effective medical device from the beginning. And I think what we see now with this clearance is that we have done it in the best possible way.
So how important then is this 510(k) clearance from the US regulatory body for the company?
Oh, it's a major milestone for us. The US is the largest and most influential medtech market in the world, and gaining access is critical for our global growth. And achieving 510(k) clearance not only opens this market, but also demonstrates our ability to navigate one of the most rigorous regulatory systems and reinforcing the strength of our technology and team, of course. So in summary, it's important both commercially, unlocking sales in a key market, but also strategically, as it strengthens our credibility with investors, partners, and competitors worldwide. But this is also the next step in our development that can start. So our next device, which is built on the exact same proven design, will be specifically intended for complete excision of breast tumors in this minimal invasive procedure. So with the clearance of our first device, we can take the next step in the development of our next devices. So it's really, really important for us.
So US patients now, once you get into the market with the FDA clearance, US patients are now able to get access to your device. What about the European market and the CE mark? Where are you with that?
So the CE mark is also key for us. We can see that there are basically two major regulatory systems in the world. We have the US system and we have the EU system. We submitted for US and CE mark, US 510K clearance and CE mark in parallel. And we are in the final stages of CE mark as well. So we have completed the QMS audits and are now waiting for the final stages of the technical documentation reviews. So hopefully that will come in short as well.
No, that's excellent. So you've received FDA clearance, you've submitted CE mark, which is underway. So what does that mean for your strategy?
So besides being able to launch the device in the US, as I said before, this also means that we are well on our way to a truly global market. So as said, simplified, there are two major regulatory systems in the world for medical devices. We have the EU and the US, and most other markets base their own regulations on one of these. So with both 510K clearance and a future CE mark, we will have a strong foundation for obtaining approvals in additional regions. But also that we know that we have had the stepwise approach for development and for regulatory purpose as well. So clearance and CE mark for our first device will be sort of the first stepping stone for our next, the tumor removal product as well. So advancing the development of our coming devices based on the previous one is a key in our strategy. So this is what we are aiming for in development and launching devices as well.
Okay, that's excellent. Elisabeth, if I may ask you now, I mean, I also mentioned strategy. Are you able to tell us about your plans and which markets are you going to be focused on now?
Yes, absolutely. It is very exciting times for us because this is now where we are starting to see use of the device clinically in medical everyday practice. So the end of this year, we have our first case series in Sweden planned. And we are maybe going to include about 15 to 20 patients. And when that is up and running, we are adding sites throughout the EU. So we are going to include more EU sites, more EU patients, and that's going to add for the post-market clinical follow-up that we're going to do. So while that is ongoing, we're also planning for a new clinical investigation. And the purpose of that is to expand the claims of the device that we have right now. So with that new clinical investigation, we're going to generate clinical data to expand claims for tumor removal. And one of the things that we really have a big benefit of is that our clinical investigations can be done, I wouldn't say quickly, but in a relatively short time span. You know, patients are readily available. Follow-up time that we have is pretty short. We know that our procedure has been successful and done in a safe way. So all of this taken together means that we expect to have clinical data that we need to expand the claims by end of next year, which we think is pretty quick. And we are also having discussions with physicians throughout the world, not only in the EU, but also in the US, the Middle East, and Africa, to see how they will be able to adopt our device and our technology at their respective sites.
So you have this global ambition. Will your technology be economically viable everywhere?
Yes, it definitely will. But when we are the market, we will also conduct clinical studies to gather health economic data. But when we start to summarize all the cost that goes into open surgery and compare that to the cost related to purchase and use of Resitu's instrument, the comparison will always benefit our device.
So that's great to know, Asa. So if I was a woman in the US or in an African country, how should I feel knowing that your device will soon be available in the market?
That's a really good question, Shani. And I just want to highlight that the brilliance with the Resitu instrument is that it can be used and do good all over the world. We have different use patterns. We have different sort of healthcare system. If you start with the sort of developed countries, this is a way to, as Elisabeth said before, combine two-step in the treatment process. You are combining the diagnosis where you harvest tissue you take the biopsy and send for histopathological examination. But when you are doing this, you already have removed the entire tumor. So you're combining two-step, which dramatically shortens the time that the woman has to spend in the healthcare system, can advance to further treatments and basically recover sooner. But if we go to the underserved countries, where there's limited access to surgical settings, we know that this device can be used in an outpatient setting. So for women there, this could be an alternative, or maybe in even some cases, the only option to get the tumor removed in a timely manner. So that is the key for us, to make sure that it is a global product and it can do good in all parts of the world, basically.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Åsa said. And if I can add to that, if you think about it from almost like a personal perspective, if it was me, if somebody said to me that there is something that has been seen on an X-ray and that need further investigation, the whole reason for taking tissue from a potentially malignant lesion is to be able to study it and say, is everything okay? Or is there something there that need to be removed? For me, I would always choose to have as a procedure where more tissue is available, rather than just having a sample. If you think about it almost like a little, you have this lesion, instead of going out and harvesting just maybe a few bits and pieces, smaller slices, I would always ask for a larger sample so that the histopathologist who's going to look at my tissue have the best situation for being able to make an accurate diagnosis. So, yeah, that would also be my preference.
Excellent. I guess for most women as well with breast cancer. So other than breast cancer, what other areas can the technology be used in?
It's also an interesting question. And of course, Resitu is a platform technology. And we have several other indications in our pipeline. So we're looking at, with different diameters, with different parts of the body, increased claims, different pathologists. So there is a lot of things we are aware of and planning as well. But our focus right now is breast cancer.
I see. As Elisabeth, this has been an enlightening conversation, and your technology certainly seems to have the potential to transform and change women's lives. Do you have any last words?
Yes, if I can start with that, Shani. We are in October right now, and it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So my final thing that I would like to say is to please remember to screen. It is so important. Early detection is absolutely crucial. So yeah, that would be my final message. Åsa?
Our mission is really clear. We will set a new standard in breast cancer care and will make lasting difference for women worldwide. And I can promise we will succeed.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, both of you. And that concludes our time for today. Asa, Elisabeth, thank you for sharing what Resitu Medical is doing and achieving with its 510K clearance. I also want to thank our listeners for joining us as we looked at this new technology that has the potential to transform early diagnosis and potentially treatment of breast cancer. If you have any questions or topics you'd like to discuss with us in future episodes of Biobiz Buzz, please send your responses to interviews@biobizbuzz.com. To stay updated on the upcoming editions of Biobiz Buzz, follow us on LinkedIn, where we will post a lot about future episodes. Thank you, Asa. Thank you, Elisabeth.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shani, for having us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.